So this is the new development. Janet Yellen's meeting with top bankers. Does that influence these negotiations in any meaningful way?
I don't think in a meaningful way. I think it's something that the Treasury Secretary has to do. But keep in mind, from a Republican perspective, and McCarthy representing House Republicans, they don't represent a lot of kind of Wall Street districts, right? They're middle America, more rural areas. They don't want to hear from Wall Street. They want to hear from their own community bankers and local folks. So I think, like I said, it's a check the box exercise. It has to be done. I don't think it meaningfully moves the ball.
Okay, so that box is going to get checked sometime next week. Let's talk about the meeting that was delayed until next week. So what does that delay say to you? And are you expecting to see some meaningful progress when all these big decision makers get back in a room together, even after what Kevin McCarthy had to say?
And so there are mixed messages. Obviously, the speaker was fairly pessimistic in his comments. At the same time, I do think staff continuing to meet is a positive. People should not lose sight of that. Staff can accomplish a lot outside of the principals meeting. Now, there are differences among the staff about what exactly the principals, McCarthy, the president, and the others are actually negotiating over. So there are a lot of questions there about how close or not close they are. I don't read that much into this meeting, today's meeting being postponed. It wasn't going to accomplish much. Keep the staffs working, keep the ball moving forward. But they have a lot of ground to cover. And it's not just that first week of June that people are focusing on. You know, Memorial Day comes before that. And the House and the Senate are typically out of session right after Memorial Day. So I'm not looking the first week of June. I'm looking at Friday, the 26th, I believe, 2 weeks from today, the 26th of May. I think that's really when they have to have something in place in anticipation of that following week.
All right, here's the complicated question. How serious is the risk of default when you really come down to it? And if we do see June 1st come and we don't have a deal, the general consensus is there's enough money to pay out certain things, but some things can't be paid. How does that influence the deal after June 1st? Because it would be perhaps, veterans payments or Social Security payments that get impacted. How does that influence how this deal gets sorted out?
Yeah, so I'm gonna differentiate between a technical default and an actual default.
Okay.
I think the chances of a technical default where we get to that X date and the debt ceiling has not been raised, I think that's fairly high. An actual default where the government delays a payment, a bond payment, whether principal or interest, to bondholders, I think that's low. I think Treasury can use, they can roll over debt. They can't issue new debt, but they can roll over debt to pay current bondholders. They can prioritize that. I think your follow-up question then, that the next level is what other payments get delayed. And does grandma miss her Social Security payment? Does a veteran miss his check? Does a soldier, sailor, Marine, is their payroll check delayed? Or, from a business perspective, does a government contractor vendor have their payments delayed? And what does that mean to their business and the ability? Yeah, so I think there are downstream effects. I think there's a lot of focus on the bond market. And I don't want to dismiss that. I think government is able to prioritize those enough that I am confident that there's not going to be a default. It's the second and third stream effects of this and how that all plays out. I think those are where
So Brian, I want to come full circle. You were saying the Congress people, they don't want to hear from bankers. They're more worried about middle America, but the technical default is what you're talking about. That impacts middle America. So how do the politics of that influence the deal if we get past June 1st? Is that, move the cost cutting off the table? Because some of these Congress people, they certainly can't take the political hit of our soldiers not getting paid or perhaps grandmothers not getting their payments.
Right. So if they get through the X date and some payment somewhere to somebody is delayed, I think that ratchets it up the pressure that has not been felt up on Capitol Hill yet, and they'll cut a deal relatively quickly. I think there's just going to be a capitulation on both sides. They will quickly move to some kind of deal, a face-saving deal.
Okay.
The cuts won't be as steep as what House Republicans have been asking, but they were never going to be as steep as the original bill anyway.
Okay.
Democrats it will lean more in the Democratic direction, most likely.